The hum of the Dominion's engines filled the silent void of space as Captain Elias Hunter stood at the helm, his fingers barely touching the cold metal of the command chair. Outside, the stars glinted like diamonds against the black expanse, a constant reminder of the fragile peace humanity had fought so hard to maintain. But peace was a fragile thing, especially in the Xanthal sector, and Elias could feel the weight of that truth settling on his shoulders. "Captain, we've cleared the outer perimeter," Lieutenant Commander Marissa Quinn's voice crackled through the comms. "We're ready for the summit." Elias sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose. The summit was supposed to be a victory, a chance to solidify humanity's place in the galactic order. But Elias had never liked politics. Behind every handshake, every peaceful declaration, there were factions waiting for their moment to strike. It was never truly peaceful, it was just temporary. "Understood, Quinn," he replied, his voice low but steady. "Keep your team sharp. I've got a bad feeling about this one." Quinn's voice shifted slightly. "You think the Korrath will make a move?" Elias didn't need to answer. The Korrath Empire had been a constant thorn in humanity's side, an ancient reptilian species with technology light years ahead of anything Earth could muster. The fact that the peace talks were happening at all was a testament to humanity's progress, but Elias wasn't naive. He knew the Korrath didn't make moves without an agenda. He glanced over at the view screen, watching as the barren moon of the Xanthal system slowly grew larger. The Dominion, a massive peacekeeping vessel, was the pride of humanity's fleet, a symbol of their redemption after the Korrath War. Yet Elias could see the cracks, the flaws in the armor. Even now, as the ship drifted closer to its destination, he couldn't shake the feeling that this piece was as fragile as the hole they were traveling in. Suddenly, the ship's sensors beeped, an anomaly flashing on the radar. "Captain, we've got an unknown fleet, coming in fast," the ensign at the sensor station reported, his voice sharp with urgency. Elias's heart skipped a beat. It was too soon. The summit wasn't supposed to start for another 12 hours. No one was supposed to be here yet. "Can you identify them?" Elias asked, standing up from his chair, eyes narrowing as he watched the screen. "Negative, sir," the ensign responded. "They're not showing up as any of the known fleets. But they're big, really big." The Dominion had been designed to handle large-scale combat, but even with its advanced shields and weaponry, an unknown fleet meant one thing: trouble. "Sound the alert," Elias ordered, his voice calm but laced with an edge of authority. "Activate defense systems. Battle stations." His orders echoed through the ship's corridors as the alarms blared to life, rousing the crew from their stations. The ship's defenses came online with a low hum, the massive cannons hidden beneath the ship's hull preparing to fire. "Quinn," Elias said, grabbing the comms again. "Prepare your team. We're going to need a full combat loadout. Whatever this is, it's not good." "Aye, Captain. We'll be ready." Elias's mind raced as he took his position at the command console. The unknown fleet wasn't a random occurrence. Someone, somewhere, had deliberately placed this threat in their path. But why? And who? The fleet appeared on the view screen, the silhouettes of their ships slowly taking shape in the darkness. They were massive, even larger than the Dominion, and their design was like nothing Elias had ever seen, sleek, angular, with dark metallic surfaces that seemed to absorb light. They were Korrath, no doubt about it. The markings on the lead ship were unmistakable. "Evasive maneuvers," Elias barked, his voice cutting through the chaos of the command deck. "Prepare to fire on my mark." As the Korrath fleet closed in, the tension in the air thickened. Elias knew that the Dominion was more than capable of defending itself, but this wasn't just about military superiority. This was a message. The Korrath were testing humanity's resolve again, reminding them of their place in the galaxy. "Hold steady," Elias muttered under his breath. The crew around him was tense, but they had trained for this. They knew what to do. "Captain, incoming fire." The sensor officer's voice came through the comms, panic creeping into her tone. The first blast rocked the Dominion's shields, sending a ripple of energy across the ship. Elias gritted his teeth but didn't flinch. They'd take worse than that. Return fire, he commanded, his voice low but forceful. The ship's massive cannons erupted in response, bright beams of light cutting through the dark expanse, slamming into the oncoming Korrath ships. It was a dance, an exchange of fire. The Dominion's cannons, while powerful, were no match for the Korrath's superior technology. The Korrath fired relentlessly, but Elias's crew moved with precision, countering every attack and managing to keep the ship intact. For a few tense moments, it felt like a standstill. The enemy fleet hesitated, regrouping, clearly assessing the situation. But Elias knew that this was just the beginning. The comms crackled again. "Captain," Quinn's voice was tight with urgency. "We've got a problem. The Korrath have deployed something big." The view screen shifted to show a large object emerging from the belly of the Korrath flagship. It was massive, almost as large as the Dominion itself, but it was heavily armored, with sleek, jagged edges that seemed to shimmer in the darkness. "What the hell is that?" Elias asked, though he already knew the answer. "A new weapon," Quinn replied, her voice grim. "And it's heading straight for us." Elias's stomach dropped. This wasn't just a skirmish. This was a statement. The Korrath had been preparing for this moment. They'd come to end this fragile peace. And they weren't alone. Elias's grip on the chair tightened as the incoming weapon drew closer. It was a test. But he wouldn't fail. Not this time. "Brace for impact," he ordered, his voice like steel. The battle had just begun, and Elias knew that whatever came next, humanity's resolve would be tested to its limits. The Dominion's hull groaned under the assault, the darkened corridors lit by the flashing red lights of emergency systems. The ship was still holding together, but the Korrath had made their point clear. They weren't just testing humanity's military prowess, they were sending a message, a challenge to the fragile peace. Elias stood at the command console, watching the view screen flicker with the remnants of the latest exchange of fire. The Korrath flagship loomed larger, its dark silhouette surrounded by the smaller, more agile ships of their fleet. It was as if the very void around them was saturated with the weight of this new threat. A new weapon, an unknown force, and the realization that peace was a lie. The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place, and they painted a chilling picture. "Status report," Elias barked, his voice calm but edged with urgency. "Shields are holding at 75%, Quinn replied, her eyes scanning her own console. "We've lost a few auxiliary systems, but nothing critical for now. The Korrath flagship is powering up again. It's not retreating." Elias didn't need to ask. He could feel it, a pressing weight in the air, something just beyond the edge of perception. The Korrath were plotting something more dangerous than a mere attack. They wanted to break humanity's spirit. And Elias couldn't let that happen. "Any sign of reinforcements?" Elias asked, knowing the answer before he spoke. "Negative," Quinn said. "The Dominion is alone in this sector. No one's coming to help us anytime soon." Elias closed his eyes for a brief moment, taking a breath. The weight of command pressed harder on him now. He wasn't just fighting to keep the ship intact, he was fighting to protect the future of humanity itself. The Korrath weren't interested in simple victory, they wanted to erase the progress humanity had made. To crush their hope. "Get me the council," Elias said, his tone hardening. The communication link flickered to life, and the faces of the summit's delegates appeared on the screen. The human representatives, their faces tired but determined, stared back at him, waiting for orders. Captain Hunter, the chief diplomat, Andrew Monroe, spoke first. "What's happening?" "The Korrath are not supposed to engage until the peace talks begin." "That was the plan," Elias replied, his gaze hardening as he looked at the alien faces of the delegates. "But it's clear the Korrath have no interest in peace. They've launched an assault on the Dominion. We are under attack." A murmur ran through the council, and Elias could see the concern on their faces. But there was no time for fear. There was only time for action. "Listen to me carefully," Elias continued, his voice growing more intense. "I need every available asset prepped and ready. We don't know what the Korrath have up their sleeves, but we can't afford to let them get any closer. You'll hold the summit at all costs. We can't let them see our fear. Monroe nodded grimly. Understood. But what about you, Captain? I'm not going anywhere, Elias said. I'll keep this ship intact, but if the Korrath are serious about destroying humanity's future, they'll have to go through me first. With a final exchange of orders, the link was cut. Elias turned back to his crew. The silence in the command deck was thick, a quiet but palpable tension hanging over everyone. They had come here to discuss peace, but now, it seemed that war had come looking for them. Quinn, Elias called, his voice resolute. What's the status on that weapon? The one they deployed earlier. What can we expect? Quinn's fingers flew over the console, her face illuminated by the soft glow of the screens. It's unlike anything we've ever seen, Captain. The readings are off the charts. Whatever it is, it's designed to be a game changer. If it gets any closer, it could breach our shields with ease. Elias clenched his fists, his jaw tightening. The Korrath were playing for keeps. He didn't have time to be angry, he needed to think, to act. He'd dealt with the Korrath before, but this was different. The weapons they had used before were nothing like this. This was something more. Something far more personal. Prep all fighters, Elias ordered. Get the Dominion's weapons ready. We're going to hit them first. Captain, Quinn said, a note of hesitation in her voice. We don't have the resources to keep fighting them. If we push too far, we might provoke something irreversible. I don't have the luxury of waiting for their next move, Elias replied, turning to face her. His eyes were steady, determined. Do we have a plan for taking out their flagship? I've got a suggestion, Quinn said, pausing for a moment. But it's risky. If we can get close enough, we can deploy a concentrated burst from our ion cannons to disable their shields. That'll give us a brief window to board and disable the flagship's power core. Elias considered the suggestion. It was a risky maneuver, one that could leave the Dominion vulnerable if things went wrong. But they didn't have a choice. Do it, Elias said. Prepare the fighters for boarding. We need to take that ship down before it can launch anything else. As Quinn relayed the orders to the crew, Elias found himself alone in the command center for a moment, his mind racing. His gut twisted with uncertainty. The Korrath were ruthless, and they knew how to exploit every weakness. But humanity wasn't the weak species they had once been. The Dominion's crew was the best humanity had to offer. Elias looked out at the view screen, his eyes narrowing as the Korrath flagship drew closer. He knew this battle wasn't just about winning, it was about sending a message of their own. Humanity wasn't here to be pushed around. They'd earned their place among the stars. Bring it on, Elias muttered under his breath. The ship shook again as the Korrath fired another round of devastating blasts at the Dominion's shields. The crew sprang into action, the ship bracing for impact. Every second felt like an eternity, but Elias remained calm. This was what he was trained for. What he was born to do. As the countdown to the final assault began, Elias knew one thing for certain: this was just the beginning. The Korrath thought they could break humanity's spirit. But they had underestimated one thing. Humanity didn't break. Not anymore. The Dominion shuddered as another impact slammed into its shields, sending ripples across the hull. Elias gripped the armrest of his chair, eyes fixed on the view screen. The Korrath flagship was a massive, imposing presence now, hovering just outside their range, and with every passing second, it seemed to grow even larger in his mind. They were nearing the moment of truth, the moment where humanity's resolve would either shatter or stand unbroken. Captain, Quinn's voice cut through the tension, her tone steady but laced with urgency. We're almost in range. Ion cannons are primed for the strike. Shields holding at 45%. Elias didn't respond right away. His mind was already working ahead. If they didn't disable the Korrath flagship now, they would lose the opportunity. Humanity's chance to prove they could fight, and win, would slip through their fingers. It was more than just a battle. This was the test of humanity's place in the stars. Do it, Elias finally commanded. The crew responded in sync, their movements a dance of calculated precision. The countdown on the tactical display ticked down. As the Dominion closed the distance, the massive Korrath flagship unleashed another volley of energy blasts, tearing into their shields. Elias's teeth clenched as the ship rocked beneath him. They couldn't take much more of this. Steady, he muttered under his breath, watching the countdown reach 0. The ion cannons fired in a blistering arc of energy, the blast surging toward the Korrath flagship. For a moment, the whole bridge held its breath. The ion blast struck the enemy ship dead center, causing the shields to flare in a blinding pulse. But it wasn't enough. The Korrath ship was massive and well-armored. The shields held, but only for a moment. Then came the soft crackle of feedback in the comms system. "Shields weakening," Quinn reported. "Their systems are still intact. We need another shot, but we're dangerously close." Elias's eyes hardened. They couldn't afford another missed opportunity. It was now or never. "Prepare the boarding parties," he ordered. "Quinn, get me a direct line to the fighters. We're going in." He turned to the tactical officer. "All remaining fighters, engage. Give us a window to board that ship." "Aye, Captain," the officer replied, issuing commands to the fighter squadrons. "Engaging now." The bridge was tense, the air thick with anticipation. Every crew member knew what was at stake. This was their moment. The fighters launched from the Dominion's hangar, diving toward the Korrath flagship in a desperate attempt to create a gap in its defenses. The fighters strafed the enemy ship with laser fire, drawing Korrath fire away from the Dominion just long enough for their boarding vessels to launch. Elias's mind was already a step ahead. The Korrath flagship was on the edge of its defensive capability. With the Korrath forces distracted, it was their only chance to breach the ship's interior. But there was no telling what they would find once they boarded. "Get ready for boarding," Elias said, rising from his chair. "We hit them hard and fast. No hesitation." The boarding team suited up in their advanced combat armor, sleek, reflective, and deadly. Elias adjusted his helmet, checking his weapons, every movement precise. The air in the bay was thick with the sound of the team prepping for what could be a one-way trip. "Captain," Quinn's voice crackled over the comms, breaking the brief silence. "We're close. I'm detecting their core defenses are about to activate. We have minutes, maybe seconds, before the ship goes full lockdown. We need to breach now." Elias didn't wait for another second. "All units, move out." The boarding party, led by Elias himself, moved with military precision as they boarded their dropships. The Korrath flagship was imposing, its dark corridors winding like the inside of some massive, predatory beast. Elias led the team through the ship's metallic halls, their footsteps echoing in the cold silence. The sound of enemy ships firing on the Dominion's fighters rang in the distance, but it didn't matter now. They were in. They were committed. As they neared the core chamber, they encountered heavy resistance. The Korrath soldiers, larger and stronger than humans, waited for them in the narrow corridors, their weapons raised. Elias didn't flinch. "Take them down," he shouted. The chaos of battle erupted as both sides collided. The Korrath were formidable opponents, but the humans' discipline, strategy, and sheer determination gave them an edge. Elias's team fought with efficiency, cutting through the Korrath forces one by one. But the deeper they went, the heavier the Korrath resistance became. They were clearly trying to slow them down, trying to buy time. Elias's breath came in shallow gasps as he charged forward, his combat knife flashing in the low light. A Korrath warrior lunged at him, but Elias sidestepped with the grace of a trained soldier, plunging his blade into the creature's chest. "Clear," one of his men shouted as the last of the enemy soldiers fell. Elias didn't pause. They had to reach the core. He motioned for the team to move forward. The door to the core room loomed ahead, the giant seal pulsing with an ominous energy. As they reached the door, it slid open with a mechanical hiss, revealing the Korrath power core, a massive, glowing reactor at the center of the room. But standing between them and the core was the Korrath commander, a towering figure, clad in imposing black armor. His eyes glowed with a malevolent red light, and he sneered at Elias, as if daring him to come closer. "You think you can defeat us?" the Korrath commander growled, his voice a low rumble. Elias stood his ground, unflinching. "We already have." Without another word, the battle began in earnest. The Korrath commander moved with incredible speed, his massive blade cleaving through the air. But Elias was faster. He sidestepped the first blow, his combat knife flashing out to strike at a vulnerable spot in the commander's armor. The two clashed in a brutal dance of metal and muscle, each strike testing the limits of their strength and skill. Elias could feel the weight of the fight bearing down on him, but his mind was sharp, focused on one thing: ending this. With a final, desperate lunge, Elias drove his knife into the commander's neck, ending the battle in a flash of blood and sparks. The room was silent now, save for the steady hum of the power core. The Korrath had been defeated. Elias stood over the fallen commander, chest heaving, but a grim satisfaction in his heart. They had done it. "Course exposed, Captain," Quinn's voice echoed through his comms. "We're disabling it now." Elias took one last look at the room, the heart of the Korrath flagship, now in human hands. He turned to his team. "We're not done yet. Let's get back to the Dominion." The battle wasn't over, but humanity had made its mark. The Korrath had underestimated them. And now, they would never forget what humanity was capable of.